Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait 4 or 5 more minutes here and let everybody get registered, and we will start our second rules webinar. All right, everyone, we'll get started here with our second rules of golf webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I just wanted to show you first, and people are still limping in here, so wanted to show this to you first. If you go to our website, msga.org, under the Learn tab, if you scroll down to Rules of Golf Resources, you can find last week's webinar under MSGA Resources. So there's the webinar from last Friday, and we're also recording this one. So we'll make sure to post that as well. It takes a little time for the video to compile and be ready, but we'll get that posted later today or tomorrow for those that want to watch if you have to leave early, or for those that weren't able to attend at 1 o'clock with us today. Getting started with our presentation, let me just get into the PowerPoint here. We had a lot of great questions last week, and James is with us again today to help answer some of those questions. As we go through the slides, I have different question slides that are prepared where we'll stop and answer some of your questions. We were able to go through most of those questions last week. We had about 3 or 4 questions on penalty area relief, red penalty and yellow penalty area relief. So I wanted to review that. I have a few more slides that have some better imagery that we can go through to talk about how to handle that relief. We'll go over bunkers in greater depth. Some of this will be a review from last week, but we're going to go over bunkers in a little more depth, and then we'll talk about the putting green. So starting with the questions that we had on penalty area relief, I want to talk about the red and yellow penalty areas and the options that we have as a player when we hit it into a penalty area. So you can see here on the slide we have a red penalty area that's parallel to the hole, and the player from the tee has hit it into the penalty area and crossed the penalty area where the X is, the spot where the X and the arrow show where we last crossed the edge of that red penalty area. And we know for red penalty areas, we have 3 relief options. So stroking distance is always our first option. We always have the option to go back and play from where we last played from. In this case, it would be from the tee box. So you could re-tee anywhere in the teeing area. The teeing area is the term there that you want to remember. So that's one of our options. Option number 2 is the back on the line relief. So remember, the way we do this, we have to take the edge of the penalty area that we last crossed, use that point, take the flag stick in that point, and go back on that line as far back as we'd like to go. We pick a reference point. We get 1 club length on both sides. And then we have a relief area that we can drop the ball into. So that's option 2. And then option 3, understanding that red penalty areas get lateral relief, we can take the X point, our reference point, and get 2 club lengths from that area no closer to the hole, and then we can have that relief area to drop into. So those are the 3 options for a red penalty area. And I think this image does a better job of showing those different relief options than last week. So I wanted to share that. Also, we talked about, under the old rule, there used to be an option for relief on the opposite side, opposite margin of a water hazard. And of course, we know those are called penalty areas now. Opposite side relief is no longer in the book as a default to the rule, but it's a local rule that committees are allowed to use during events or championships, or if they want to implement that local rule. If you have a hole that makes sense for opposite side relief, you can put that in your notice to competitors and play that way. And I just wanted to highlight that. So typically when you're going to be playing, you're not going to be playing under this rule. This is only a local rule for a red penalty area. If you hit it into the red penalty area and this local rule happens to be in effect, you can go on the opposite side and take relief. And the way you would do that, let's say that we're 100 yards away from the hole from here, you would go on the other side, find a spot that's 100 yards away from the hole, and get your 2 club lengths in your relief area, and you could drop. But again, that's not a default to the rule. That has to be a local rule that's used, and you won't see it very often. So we covered red penalty area relief. I wanted to take a minute to talk about some of the yellow penalty area situations that we could get into and answer some of those questions. Like we said, we had some questions last week that we weren't able to get to. And this is a much simpler graphic on the right, but it does the job. Imagine we're playing a hole where we have a pond in front of the hole, in front of the putting green, and we have to carry that penalty area to get to the putting green. In this example, the ball crossed the edge of the penalty area on the red arrow here, and we know we only have 2 options when we talk about yellow penalty area. So we've got the stroke and distance. We can go back to play where we last played from and take a 1-stroke penalty, or we can use back on the line relief. And the way we do that is we go back on the line from where we last crossed and the hole, and go back as far as we'd like, find a reference point, have 1 club on both sides, and we have a relief area. And we know how to drop into that relief area as we went over last week, right? So those are our 2 options. Limits on location of the relief area: it must not be nearer the hole than the reference point, and it may be in any area of the course except the same penalty area. So you could have a situation where you may be dropping in a different penalty area, but you can't drop in the same penalty area. Imagine the same situation. What if the ball were to have crossed the penalty area, landed in the rough, and then trickled back into the penalty area, and we can't play it? So under this example, and I hope you can see my mouse, but if we crossed here, this would be the last edge that we crossed. And in that example, if we wanted to use the back on the line relief, you take the flag stick and the point where we last crossed, and we'd go back over in this direction to take our relief. So this example is just from straight on to keep things easy. But remember that we have two options for yellow penalty area relief under Rule 17. So I hope that clears up some of the relief procedures for penalty areas. We'll have a question slide here shortly, and we can follow up with James and see if we have any other questions. I need to make sure I unmute James so that he can talk to us. He's self-muted, so that's good. Here's our next topic just before we get into bunkers. You'll see in this slide last week. Remember, we have 5 defined areas of the course. There's 4 specific areas, and then the general area, which makes up the majority of the golf course. So we have the teeing area, which is the hole being played, bunkers, penalty areas, the putting green, because we're talking about the hole being played, and then the general area is everything else. Everything else, the fairway, the rough, the first cut, tee boxes, teeing areas and tee boxes and putting greens of other holes would be considered part of the general area. And the reason I wanted to bring this up again is because when we talk about the rules, and we talk about what rule we're going to apply and how we handle a situation, we have to first determine what part of the golf course our ball where our ball is, where it lies, what part of the golf course it currently it's on. So determining the area of the course where your ball lies. The area of the course where a player's ball lies affects the rules that apply. In playing the ball, we're taking relief. And it's really important to understand that the rules of golf always treat the ball is always going to be in one area of the course, period. So the ball is always treated as lying in only one area of the course. In this example on the right, we have a ball that's in the general area, but it's touching a penalty area line. If part of the ball is in both the general area and one of the 4 specific areas that we covered on the course, it's going to be treated as lying in that specific area. So in this example, even though the ball is in the general area, it's touching a penalty area. So we're going to treat that ball as being in the penalty area. And that's the best way to remember this, is that if you've got a ball in the general area, but it's touching one of the 4 specific areas, we're going to treat it as being in one of those, in that specific area. And then as this gets a little more complicated, if part of the ball is in 2 specific areas of the course, so this example here, we have a bunker and we have a penalty area. We're talking about 2 specific areas of the course. We're going to treat this, we have to go to Rule 2.2C in our book, and this is just something you could highlight if you have your book in front of you, maybe dog-ear it. You're going to treat the ball as lying in the specific area that comes first in this order: the penalty area, bunker, putting green. So penalty area trumps bunker, and bunker trumps putting green. So in this example, if we had a ball that was in the bunker, but it was touching the penalty area line, we're going to treat that ball as being in the penalty area. And that's what that rule tells us. And it's a good rule to keep, like I said, to keep bookmarked so that you can refer back to it if you ever get a situation like this. You just got to use this this hierarchy of what trumps, which specific area trumps other specific areas. The penalty area is going to be higher than bunker in this regard. So we're going to treat that ball as being in the penalty area. So again, that was just more of a review of last week and hopefully answering some of the questions that we had last week. James, do we have any follow-up questions to penalty area relief?
No, not at this time.
All right, we'll move along. So we want to go through bunkers in greater depth. And again, we touched on bunkers last week, what we can and can't do in a bunker, but I want to talk about how to understand whether your ball is in the bunker and when it's not in the bunker, for instance. We'll cover that. When your ball touches 2 parts of the course, which we just covered. Playing your ball in a bunker, things you can remove, restrictions on touching the sand. And then, of course, some of the changes that we reviewed last week, which we know that we can now remove loose impediments from the bunker. But we do have prohibitions on touching the sand. Remember, we talked about there's a reason why we treat these specific areas differently. Penalty areas are treated differently than bunkers. And there's things that we can't do in a bunker, for instance, that we may be able to do in a penalty area. And again, this was a review from last week. The back on the line option for an unplayable ball, we've already covered that. We'll go over margins of a bunker and talk about how, whether a ball is in the bunker or not in the bunker. So first, we need to look at the definition of a bunker. We know it's one of the 5 defined areas of the course. It's a specially prepared area of sand from which turf or soil is removed. The definitions will tell you in the back of your book. And again, that may sound like a broken record at times, but I really believe that if you have any time to spend studying the rules, you definitely want to start with your definitions. You need to understand the terminology and the definitions before you can really gain an appreciation for each specific rule. So spend some time with the definitions if you get a chance. Just some clarifications, things that are not part of the bunker. And we had a rule last week that addressed this, but it's important to understand that the lip or a wall or face of a bunker is not part of the bunker. So if it's not part of the bunker, what's it going to be? It's going to be in the general area, right? So this face of this bunker is not part of the bunker. We're going to treat that as the general area. Other things that are not part of the bunker. Inside the edge of the bunker, any growing or attached natural objects. So these church pews throughout this, these church pews are not part of the bunker. And it's important to know that. So if you hit a shot and it landed in one of these church pews, we're going to treat that as the general area because it's not part of the bunker. Any soil inside the bunker edge is not going to be part of the bunker. We'll see an example of that later. Sand that is spilled over the edge of the bunker is not part of the bunker. So again, this may be a course down south. You can tell that the edge of the bunker, the margin of the bunker rather, is over here. Any sand that is spilled out onto the course is not part of the bunker as far as the rules are concerned. Other areas of sand. This is another example. You can see the margin of the bunker here. That's the bunker. Any other areas of sand are not part of the bunker. We're not going to treat that as part of the bunker as far as the rules are concerned. So we have a couple examples to cover just to go over to explain, which ball is in the bunker and which aren't. When your ball is inside the edge of a bunker and it touches the sand on the ground, that ball is in the bunker. So that's a pretty easy one, right? We know that one is in the bunker. When your ball is in a bunker, but it's inside the edge of the bunker and on the ground where sand would be, that ball is going to be treated as in the bunker. So this is an example. Maybe we had a big storm that blew through, heavy rain, washed the bunker out. As far as the rules are concerned, even if you're in that rut, your ball is in the bunker. And when we talk about rulings and situations and how we're going to handle it, we're going to have to handle it as if the ball were in the bunker. Now, committees may make the decision to come around when we've had a storm that's blown through to mark certain areas like this as ground under repair. And they still have that option. We're not taking that away from them. The committee may have decided to mark that as ground under repair, but this is just here to show you that as far as the rules go, that ball is in the bunker unless the committee makes a decision otherwise. Your ball is inside the edge of the bunker and is in or on a loose impediment. So this is an example where we talked more about this last week. If your ball happens to be sitting on a leaf, on top of a leaf, but it's inside the margin of the bunker, we're going to treat that ball as being in the bunker, even though the ball isn't touching the sand, for instance. And our example back to this image, this ball isn't touching the sand, but it's on top of a movable obstruction, right? It's on top of the rake. And as far as the rules go, this ball is in the bunker when we're talking about taking relief and any other rule that will apply. That ball is still in the bunker, even though it's not touching sand and it's on a movable obstruction. And here's an example of an abnormal course condition. So again, last week we talked about temporary water, right? That's our new term. It's not casual water, or temporary water in the bunker. If we had a ball that landed in the middle of this temporary water, that ball is still in the bunker. And again, we may have a committee decision here that says hey, we're going to make this whole bunker ground under repair. We're going to make part of this bunker ground under repair. If you're playing at the highest levels, maybe the women's amateur championship, the men's amateur championship, you may run into a couple bunkers on the course that are like this that the committee has left alone. And it's important to understand that your ball is in the bunker, even though it's in that water. So when we talk about taking relief, that might get a little more complicated in the bunker. But it's, again, we just want to make sure you understand that if your ball's in the middle of that temporary water, it's still in the bunker. And this is an example of an integral object. So if the committee said that this walking bridge here, this wooden bridge is integral, meaning you don't get relief, if your ball's on top of that bridge, your ball's still in the bunker. And again, you may see steps. A lot of times you'll see wooden steps in the bunkers. A lot of times committees won't make those integral. They have the option to, and if they decide to not make them integral, then they're immovable obstructions, right? And you're going to get relief from them. But this is just an example of the committee saying that, okay, this walking bridge is integral, and if that's the case and your ball's on it, it's going to be in the bunker. And this goes back to the slide we talked about with the church pews, right? So if without touching sand, your ball lies on soil, grass, or growing or natural attached objects, you're not in the bunker. So an example of that would be the ball that's on this area here in the bunker. This ball is not in the bunker because it lies on soil, grass, or growing or natural objects. So that's not part of the bunker. So again, just wanted to review some of the things to understand that we really need. That's the first question we have to ask ourselves. Where does our ball lie before we can really get into, okay, now what rule applies? Any questions on that, James?
Just one question was if your ball lies on the church pew or any ground that's covered in grass within the bunker, if you're allowed to ground your club, and the answer would be yes. That was the only question.
Yeah, great question. So that's why it's important to know, right? So if your ball, let's just imagine this is a church pew, same sort of principle. If your ball was here, it's in the general area, so you can ground your club. So if you're a player that understands the rules and has a good knowledge of the rules, you're going to know that. You're going to know when you play that shot, you can ground your club, which is definitely an advantage. I'm not sure how the videos work. When we do these seminars in person, we have a lot of great videos from the USGA that we're able to show and put into our presentations that make them a little more enjoyable. I'm going to try to show this one because there's not much audio. But we talked about this last week when we talked about moving loose impediments. We've got these leaves in the bunker, and the player's going to. So I hope everyone saw that, and I would encourage you not to be this player, right? If you're going to pick up the leaves around your ball in a bunker, go ahead and take them out of the bunker. Don't throw them a foot or two away so that the next player has to deal with them. But remember that we can move loose impediments, any natural objects that are not attached, any loose impediments we can move in the bunker, and also movable obstructions. Remember we talked about the brake being a movable obstruction, a Snickers wrapper, a can of Coke. Those would be movable obstructions. We can take those out of the bunker and move. So loose impediments anywhere on or off the course may be touched or removed without penalty, including when your ball and the loose impediment are in the same bunker. Just remember, and there's a reason that this lady here was being careful around her ball. If you cause your ball to move while moving a loose impediment in the bunker, you're going to get a 1 penalty stroke, and you're going to have to replace your ball. So even though you can move them, you still need to be careful about doing that. And again, the next 3 or 4 slides are more of going over some of the things we've already talked about. But when your ball's in the bunker, you're going to get a penalty if you test the condition of the sand with your hand, a club, a rake, or any other object. So the rules still require us not to do these things. We don't want to allow the player to be able to test the conditions of the bunker before they play the shot. What's really interesting about this, and we kind of, between golf administrators, we kind of joke whether we should share it or not. But under the new rules from 2019, there's no prohibition about testing conditions of a different bunker. So let's say you played your shot to a par 3 and your ball's in the left-hand greenside bunker. Nothing in the rule prohibits you from going in the right-hand side greenside bunker and testing the conditions there, even taking a practice stroke. And again, this is something that we hope we wouldn't see too much of, because if you were to do that, you may have a pace of play problem. You know, you could get a penalty for delaying play and not playing in a timely fashion. But as far as the rules are concerned, there's no prohibitions about testing conditions of the bunker that your ball currently is in. When your ball is in a bunker, you get a penalty if you touch the sand with a club right behind right in front of your ball. Also, as you make practice swings or as you make your backswing, I think we talked about Patrick Reed doing this, right? We know that that's a no-no. Can't move sand in your backswing or during a practice swing when your ball's in the bunker. And again, things that you can do, and a lot of people are surprised to see this when we do junior clinics. This is always a fun one to go over all the things that you can do in a bunker. So we know we can dig in with our feet to take a stance. We can lean on our club to stay balanced if we think we're going to fall. Place or toss your clubs or equipment in the bunker. You can actually take your whole bag into the bunker with you. Smooth the sand to care for the course. And again, you're not going to get penalized if you hit a bad shot and you strike the sand in anger or frustration. Even if it's poor, it's poor etiquette. We wouldn't want to encourage that. But there's no rule in the bunker rule that tells you that you're going to get penalized for that. And again, this is just a review of what would result in a penalty in the bunker, right? So touching the sand to test the conditions, making a practice swing, and this last one, moving sand in your backswing. You're going to get penalized if you do any of those things. And we won't want to touch the sand right behind the ball or right in front of the ball, because that would give the player the advantage of putting that line in the sand to know where they need to make their stroke. So that's going to result in a penalty as well. And then this says that we can touch the sand, but there's always exceptions. I've gone over different things that we can't do, but there's always exceptions to the rule. We're going to be able to touch the sand when we're searching for our ball or in removing loose impediments and movable obstructions. So just like that video with the lady that was moving the leaves, she's touching the sand when she's moving those leaves, right? So we're not going to blow our whistle on her and call a penalty there just because she touched the sand, because she's allowed to move loose impediments. And this goes back, to some of the rules. You've got this red star down here at the bottom, and it's important to understand that we're not going to get a penalty for touching the sand for these following things that I'm going to show you, as long as you don't improve the conditions affecting your stroke. So I would tell you, and I pulled this up before we got started, I think if you have your rule book, pull it open to 8.1a, and in the main book, that's page 71. And just put a big star on that, or like I said, bookmark it, because that'll go over the different areas. It'll talk about what the improving conditions affecting the stroke really means. The lie of the player's ball at rest, the area of the player's intended stance, the area of the player's intended swing, line of play, and your relief area. So we can touch the sand, but we can't improve those areas. So I think that's a really important rule to go back to and read and understand. If you're going to mark 8.1. And again, this is just a review of everything we've said. Right? We can dig in with our feet. We can smooth to care for the course. We can lean on a club. We can do all these things as long as we're not improving the conditions affecting our stroke. Once you're outside of the bunker, you can touch the sand without penalty. You can smooth the sand to care for the course without penalty. And what's interesting about this is even true when you take stroke and distance back in the bunker, or the improved area is now in your line of play. So let's talk about a couple of these. So let's imagine that you're in a bunker and you thin a bunker shot over the green out of bounds. So now you're going to have to play from where you last played from. The rules allow you to go ahead and rake the bunker and get that cleaned up before you take your relief and play your next shot. So you don't have to drop your ball back in that hole you've made in the bunker from that last swing. The improved area is now in your line of play. So imagine we're playing at St. Andrews. You're in a pot bunker, and you've got no other way to play but by turning around 180 degrees and playing back toward the tee box to get out of the bunker. You can go ahead and smooth that bunker, even though your next shot, you've got to carry the pot bunker to get onto the green, right? So it's going to be in your line of play, but the rules allow you to go ahead and break that bunker, even though it's going to be on your line of play for your next shot. So that was a good amount of material there, James. I'll take a minute and see if you have any questions.
There's a couple questions here. One was by a few different people asked about the integral object in a bunker. If an integral object was in a bunker, would grounding your club be, allowed or forbidden?
So if your ball is on an integral object in the bunker, we said that the ball was in the bunker, right?
Yep.
That's a good question. That's a really good question. So the ball's in the bunker, so you cannot ground your club in that instance. And that's a great question, and that's another one of those situations where if you're in that situation, you'll know, because you know the rule, you know where your ball lies, that you can't ground your club in that instance.
Yep. Other than that, I think we can move forward.
Okay, and again, some of that, maybe half of that, was more of a rehash of last week. I just wanted to make sure that we were a little more detailed in going over understanding where our ball currently lies and how to handle knowing if your ball is in a bunker and what we can and can't do in the bunker. This next section is going to be about putting greens. Some notable changes from 2019 that we're still playing under. Almost all damage to the putting green may be repaired now, and we'll go over that. We'll talk about things that we can repair and what we can't repair. No penalty for any accidental movement of a ball or ball marker on the putting green. We should be used to this rule because this was actually changed as a local rule before modernization. And if you'll remember back to the Dustin Johnson ruling at the US Open, that really kind of propelled this change along. But if we have any accidental movement of the ball on the putting green, we're not going to get penalized. We'll talk about that. If a player's ball has been lifted or moved, and the ball then moves after being placed, the ball now owns that spot. And we'll get into that. I've got a couple examples to talk about this new idea, this new concept under the rules of your ball owning a spot on the putting green only. The player will play from that spot no matter what caused the ball to move. And like I said, we'll get into that. Interference from a wrong green now includes the player's stance in an area of intended swing. And really this change is just to make sure we get the player off the wrong putting green, right? If you're playing the first hole and you hit your ball on the 7th green, we want to make sure that we're taking care of the course and we're not causing damage to the course. So this gets us further away from that green when taking relief. Player may leave the flagstick in the hole when playing from anywhere and gets no penalty if his or her ball strikes that flagstick in motion. So again, that's something we've been used to since the change in 2019. So just like bunkers, we need to figure out how do we know when our ball's on the putting green. So our ball's on the putting green when any part of our ball touches the putting green or is inside the edge of the putting green and lies in or on anything. There's a couple examples there of a towel or leaf. So even though it would be lying on that leaf, if it's inside the edge of the putting green, we're going to treat that ball as being on the putting green. If your ball touches the putting green in the general area, we'll remember from earlier, right? So it touches a specific area and it touches the general area. We're going to treat it as lying on the specific area. So that ball is going to be on the putting green. And then if your ball touches the putting green or in any other specific area, it's not on the putting green. I like this slide because I still haven't seen this. If anyone sees this happen, if your ball touches the putting green in a penalty area or a putting green in a bunker, send me a picture. I'm sure it can happen, but I've never seen it in practice. But we know we've got that bookmark in our rules book. We know to go back to 2.2. I think it was 2.2C, and we can see which area trumps which area to figure out where our ball currently lies. So actions allowed on the putting green. We can clean our ball and we can remove sand and loose soil. These aren't really changes. We've always been able to do this. Sand and loose soil, it's important to remember you can remove sand and loose soil on the putting green, but you can't remove it anywhere else, right? Because think about it, if you could do that, you could be moving soil around in the middle of the fairway and the rough. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. So these are things we can do on the putting green only. We can repair damage, and we'll go over some of those areas. Things that can be repaired are things that are caused by a person or outside influence. So all of these items can be repaired. Ball marks, shoe damage, scrapes and indentations. So, you know, maybe we had a player in the group in front of us that got upset and slammed his putter and caused a dent in the green. We can repair that. Old hole plugs and turf plugs. I won't read all these to you. Animal tracks. So, you know, shoe damage is probably the one that came up the most, right? Under the old rule, we couldn't fix spike marks. And now if we have any shoe damage or scrapes on the greens, we can, as the player, we can fix those areas before we putt. Here are some items that aren't considered damage. So not damage, which means we cannot fix it. Normal maintenance practices, aeration holes, vertical mowing grooves, right? So that makes common sense. If we allowed players to fix aeration holes, we'd be out there for a very long time in some of the tournaments that we run. So if your ball's in an aeration hole, you're probably going to have a local rule in effect to give you relief from that. But again, that's something the committee is going to have to consider to grant you relief from that aeration hole, but you can't fix the aeration holes. Effects of irrigation, rain, or other natural sources. So, you know, and I don't think we have this in this presentation, but you'll see different parts of the year. You know, you may have maybe in early spring, the grass all hasn't grown in. So you've got, you know, you may be on a green with some bare turf. Those are natural areas of the putting green. Those can't be fixed. Natural surface imperfections and natural wears of the hole are also not considered damage and cannot be fixed. That might have been too quick for a question slide, James, but if you got anything, let me know.
One question that just came in recently was about, it's kind of a complicated answer, but if the wind blows your ball after placing it, do you play it where it lies? And that's sort of dependent on the situation that you're describing. If it was a relief situation and the wind blew it out of the relief area, the defined relief area, then I believe you would not be playing the ball as it lies there, but and as well as if you mark the ball on the putting green.
We'll actually get into a couple of those situations here in a second when we talk about your ball owning the spot. So hold that one. We'll talk about it more. Action is not allowed on the putting green, except between the play of two holes. And again, if you're familiar with the rule book, anytime you read a rule, there's going to be exceptions, which can kind of drive you nuts. But it's important to understand those exceptions. So between the play of two holes, this is okay, but action is not allowed on the putting green. Rubbing the surface, rolling a ball. This also applies on a wrong green while play is stopped. So if we're in a group and we've completed play the hole before we walk to the next tee box, we're allowed to roll a ball. We're allowed to make a practice putt, as long as that local rule isn't in effect that prohibits us from doing those things. But you're allowed to roll a ball and you're allowed to rub the surface after you've completed play the hole. But you're not allowed to do this while playing the hole. And so that's important to understand that there's restrictions on, you know, rolling a ball and practicing, for instance, during play of the hole. Before you putt, you or your caddy may touch the putting green to point out where you should aim or how your putt will break. So you can see in this picture on the right, the caddy has the flagstick and he's actually touching the green. And if you'll remember back under the old rules, this was not okay. This was a penalty. But this has been relaxed. This is one of the rules that have been relaxed. The caddy's allowed to touch the green, say putt it here. So you can do so with a hand, a foot, or anything you're holding. And again, he's using the flagstick there. However, you or your caddy may not set down any object on or off the putting green to show your aim or break, even if it's removed. So this is an interesting one. And if any of you have been to rules school, they like to show, I think they like to show the example with Arnold Palmer. But if a caddy, for instance, put a bottle of water on the fringe as an aim for the player to putt, they're going to get penalized even if they remove that bottle of water. So as soon as that bottle of water is put down by the caddy to show the line, that's a penalty. So if that ever happens, you might as well leave it because you're going to get penalized either way. And this may be, I think this is one of the only other videos. And again, it may lag, but I'm going to try to play it here.
How your putt will break. This includes touching the flags.
So you probably can't hear the audio. I can hear it on my screen, but it was basically just going over exactly what we talked about. So the player there, the caddy there, picked the flag up and touched the green, and that's okay now. When you putt, your caddy must not deliberately stand in a location on or close to your line of play to help you or to do anything else to point out where you should aim or how your putt will break. And then here we go with another exception. However, your caddy may attend the flag stick for you. So we all know that the caddy is allowed to attend the flag stick. So they're not going to get penalized for attending the flag stick in this case. What's interesting about this rule is that, you know, if the caddy here were holding the flag stick and told the player, hey, aim at my right foot, that's okay. But if the caddy were to move his foot and say, hey, aim at my right foot, now we got a penalty. So any deliberate movement by the caddy to ask the player to help the player aim would not be okay. So you got to be careful there, but understand that the rules allow the caddy to attend the flag stick for you. If you can avoid penalty, if the person backs away. So this is an interesting slide, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but when the modernized rules rolled out in 2019. There was a lot of talk about caddies standing behind players on their line of play, and there's several tour players that got penalized. And, you know, Justin Thomas got penalized. Even local boy Denny McCarthy was penalized, and then it was taken back. So they've revisited this rule several times. This is why you want to make sure that you print out the clarifications on the website. We talked about that last week, the USGA clarifications. But basically, if the caddy's behind the player in this example on the right, the player's not going to get penalized as long as the player backs away, gets out of their stance, comes back, and then hits the putt. So gets the caddy out of there and then hits the putt. They're only going to be penalized if the caddy stays there while they're making their stroke. Ball moved on the putting green, and we're going to get into some of those questions James had earlier. Ball or ball marker on putting green moved by you. So there's no penalty for accidental movement of a ball or ball marker, and you must replace your ball or ball marker. And this gets back to any accidental movement. So, you know, you're being careless and you walk around and your ball marker sticks to your shoe, that's accidental. You accidentally bump the ball before you putt, that's accidental. You're going to be able to get off the hook, no penalty, but you've got to replace the ball back on the spot. Ball moved by natural forces on the putting green. So this is the example, and I may get ahead of the slides here a little bit, but let's imagine, back to James's question, if we're playing a par 3 and we hit the ball, we hit our tee shot up on the green and it comes to rest. And as we walk up to the green, a gust of wind blows and it blows the ball off the green back into the fringe or back into the fairway. Well, if you've played enough golf, you probably got the answer to this one. You're going to play the ball where it lies, right? So if it blew it off the green, you're going to play it from that new spot. A second example of that would be the same situation. You're on a par 3, you hit it up on the green, you go up, you mark your ball, pick your ball up, read the putt, put your ball back, and maybe it's somebody else's turn to play, or there's 20 or 30 seconds there. A gust of wind blows the ball off the green, or blows the ball anywhere. That's when we get into that idea and that new concept of your ball owning the spot. So since you marked it and lifted it, your ball owns that spot. So you're going to put it back. You're going to put it back to where you had marked it. So if you lifted your ball and replaced your ball, you put it back. If you haven't, you play it from its new spot. So that haven't was that first example where we played up to the green and it blew it off the green before we got up there to mark it. But that's the concept of marking your ball on a putting green versus not marking your ball, and it owning the spot versus not owning the spot. If a ball marker is moved by natural forces, and again, you're not going to see this too often, but if the ball marker was blown off the green, in any situation, you're always going to put the ball marker back. So we went through those a little quicker than last time. I had about the same number of slides. I'm happy to answer any questions, James. I hope that answered the question on the ball owning the spot. But if we have any follow-up questions, let me know.
I don't have any right now. The way that question had been asked, it was not entirely clear if we were describing a situation where we're on the putting green and you're marking the ball and then placing it, or if it was in the general area or somewhere else. But I was just thinking of a relief situation, maybe where if a gust of wind blew the ball. But I think we pretty much covered it.
Okay. Well, I mean, we, like I said, I kind of went through this presentation a little quicker than the last one. But if anyone has any other questions, please let us know. Don't reply to the IAGA email. You're probably getting some automated emails from them for thanking you for attending, and those emails don't come to James or I directly. So if you have any questions you'd like to email us, send it to knewland, that's KNEWLAND @msga.org. And again, I'll probably send out a follow-up email when I post this on the website. But we really appreciate you guys attending. And if I'll check with James here, we'll see if we've got a few more minutes. We can see if we have any other questions.
Yeah, Kelly, we do have a few others that have rolled in here. Not necessarily directly related to what we were just describing at the end of the presentation, but one question was, can someone hold an umbrella while you putt? While you make the stroke, the answer would be no. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, or that's just the answer, but.
Yeah, so you know, and this goes back, I'd have to do some digging, but you can't have someone hold the umbrella over you while you putt to, you know, keep natural forces off you, rain, wind, you know, that kind of thing, while you putt. That's right, James, you wouldn't be able to, but you're gonna get penalized if a caddy were to hold your umbrella over your head while you putted.
Another question that's sort of more specific to equipment is, what can you use as a marker, a ball marker? And I think I had this question last time too. If you go into the Rules of Golf app or in your rule book, under the definitions, there is a definition for ball marker.
Yeah, that's great. That's one of the you know, one of our 73 definitions. You know, the definition talks about how you can use a tee, a coin, or any other object as a ball marker. So, you know,
yeah, I'll just read it aloud. I'll just read the definition aloud. It's an artificial object when used to mark the spot of a ball to be lifted, such as a tee, coin, and an object made to be a ball marker or another small piece of equipment.
Yep.
That's all the questions that have come in so far.
Okay. Well, again, we appreciate you taking the time to do this webinar with us, and we're happy. We're working from home, and we're happy to help you with any other rules questions that come up between now and next week. And we'll try to shoot for next Friday to do another webinar. I think we still have some good content that we can go over and keep the discussion alive. So thanks so much for joining us today.